This is Marcus Vane, Night Supervisor, Callaway County Telephone Cooperative, and I'm recording this because I don't trust my own memory anymore. It's 11:47 at night. I want that on the record. The timestamp matters. You'll understand why later. Let me tell you what this place sounds like on a normal shift, because in about an hour, none of it will be normal again. There's the hum. The big switching equipment in Bay 3 has a hum you stop hearing after your first week, this low electrical breathing that fills the whole floor. There's the heater clicking on and off. There's my coffee maker, which I'd describe as aggressive. And there's the phones. We're a small co-op. We handle landline service for about 9,000 customers across 3 rural townships. Plus, we maintain the relay for the regional emergency line. Mostly, the job is monitoring. You watch the boards, you wait for something to break. Tonight, nothing was supposed to break. I've been doing this 19 years. I know the rhythm of a quiet night, the way you know the sound of your own house settling. And about 20 minutes ago, the rhythm changed. It started small. A call came through the monitoring queue, one of the automated ones we record for quality. Customer dials a number, can't connect. The system logs it. Routine. Except when I pulled the audio to check it, there were 3 people on the line. The customer, the person they called, and someone else. Someone who didn't say anything, just breathed, low and even, underneath both of them, like a third hand on a piano playing a note so quiet you only notice it when it stops. I told myself it was crosstalk. Old lines do that. 2 calls bleeding into each other. But crosstalk doesn't breathe in time with you. I'm going to keep recording. If you're hearing this, stay with me. I think I'm going to need a witness. The first thing you do when something doesn't make sense is you try to make it make sense. That's the job. That's 19 years of training. You don't panic. You troubleshoot. So I troubleshot. Crosstalk is real. Out here, we still have copper in the ground, lines older than I am. And when the insulation degrades, you get bleed. One conversation leaking into another. I've heard it 100 times. It sounds like a ghost at a dinner party. Faint voices saying things that have nothing to do with you. You learn to ignore it. But crosstalk has tells. It's faint. It fades in and out with line load. It carries actual content, words, sentences. Somebody's grandmother talking about her hip surgery. This wasn't that. This was clear. Not loud, but clear. Sitting right in the middle of the audio like it belonged there. And it had no content. No words. Just breath. Slow, deliberate, patient breath. And here's the part I keep circling back to. I played the recording again, and I held my own breath to listen closer. And the breathing on the line kept going at the same pace. Steady, in, out. So it wasn't me. It wasn't my own breath picked up by the mic. I pulled 3 more recordings from the last hour. Random calls. A guy ordering a pizza that probably doesn't deliver this far out. A woman calling her daughter. A wrong number, all 3. Same third presence, same breathing. Underneath every single one. I checked the equipment. Diagnostics came back green. Every board, every relay, every line. The system says everything is working perfectly. I want to believe the system. I called Dale, our line tech, who's home asleep and was not thrilled to hear from me. I described it. There was a long pause. And Dale, who has been doing this longer than me, who has never once been spooked by anything, said, "Marcus, are you saying it's on every call? Or are you saying it's on every call you've checked?" I hadn't thought about it that way, so I started checking all of them. Dale's question lodged in me like a splinter, because there's a difference, isn't there? There's a difference between a problem that happens sometimes and a problem that happens always. One is a glitch, the other is a condition. I pulled up the master log. We record a rolling sample, roughly 1 in 20 calls, for quality assurance. Federal requirement. On a normal night, that's a few hundred clips by midnight. I started opening them at random and skipping to the middle, 15 seconds each, just listening for that breath. Clip after clip after clip. It was on all of them. Not most. Not a suspicious number. All of them. A man arguing with his brother about a fence line. The breath was there. A teenager whispering to someone she was clearly not supposed to be calling. The breath was there, underneath her whispering, patient, like it was waiting for her to finish. An old man leaving a voicemail for what I think was a dead wife, talking about the weather, and beneath his cracking voice, in and out, in and out. I sat back from the board. I want to describe to you what that feels like, professionally. When you find a flaw that's everywhere, your first instinct isn't fear. It's almost relief, because a universal problem usually means a single cause. One bad component upstream, one corrupted process. Fix the source, fix everything. So that's what I clung to. Somewhere in our system, one piece of equipment is injecting a sound into every recorded call. A test tone gone wrong. A maintenance loop. Something stupid and mechanical and fixable. I trace the recording pipeline back to its origin. The clips are captured at the switch and written to a server in the back room we call the vault, because it's the only room with its own lock and its own AC. I went to the vault, and I stood at the door for a second, because through it, faint under the AC, I could hear something. Breathing. I told myself it was the air handler. Air handlers make all kinds of sounds. Then I opened the door, and the room was empty, and the breathing didn't stop. Let me be very precise about the vault, because precision is the only thing keeping me steady right now. It's a small room, maybe 10 feet by 12. Concrete floor, one steel door, no windows. There's the recording server, 2 backup units, the AC, and a folding chair nobody uses. That's it. I can see the entire room from the doorway. There is nowhere for a person to be. There was no person. But the breathing was in the room. Not in the speakers, not in the equipment, in the air, coming from somewhere in the middle, around chest height, in that empty space between the server rack and the far wall. I did something I'm not proud of. I said, "Hello?" Out loud, to an empty room. The breathing paused. Just for a second. The way yours does when someone says your name across a crowded space, and part of you wonders if you really heard it. Then it continued. I closed the door. I'm not going back in there. I want to say that clearly for whoever reviews this. I made a judgment call that the vault was not safe, and I left it sealed. I'm back at my station now. I've got the recording running on my phone, propped against the coffee maker, and I've got the master board in front of me. And the board has changed. When I left, we had the normal overnight call volume. Light. A handful of active lines, mostly automated. Now every line is lit. All 9,000. Active. Connected. At 12:14 in the morning, in 3 sleeping townships, every single phone in my service area is on a call. And not one of them is ringing. I need to explain why 9,000 active lines at midnight is impossible. And then I need to explain why impossible stopped being a useful word about 10 minutes ago. A phone line shows active when there's a connection. You pick up, you dial, the circuit completes, the board lights. Simple. At 2 a.m. in farm country, you might have 40, 50 active lines. People don't make calls at 2 a.m. unless something is wrong. 9,000 means every household, every business, every barn extension and back bedroom rotary phone is currently connected to something, and the boards say they didn't dial out, and they didn't receive a ring. The connection just formed, like the whole grid inhaled at once and held its breath. I started monitoring individual lines. I have the authority to listen in for maintenance purposes. And I'm telling you that so you know I'm not doing anything I shouldn't. I picked a line at random. The Hadley farm, out on Route 9. I patched in, breathing. 2 sets. The slow, patient one I'd been hearing all night. And a second one, faster, shallower. Human. Scared. Then a voice. A woman, half asleep, confused. She said, "Hello? Who is this? It's the middle of the night." She wasn't talking to me. She couldn't hear me. She was talking to whatever was on her line. And the patient breathing answered her. Not with words, with her own name, in her own voice, played back to her, slightly delayed, like an echo that had learned to speak. "Carol," it said, in Carol's voice. "Carol, are you there?" I heard her drop the phone. I heard footsteps. I heard, very far away, her calling out for someone named Roy. Then the line went quiet. Not disconnected. Quiet, waiting. I pulled out. I sat there with my heart going and I made myself think. Here's what I landed on. Whatever this is, it's using the phone system as a delivery method. But it isn't the phone system. The equipment is just the door, and it's learning. It started as breath. Now it's voices. Now it's names. I want to call this a hoax, a hack, a coordinated attack. I want a human explanation more than I've ever wanted anything. But no hacker breathes in an empty room. And no hack knew that Carol's husband is named Roy. The third voice knows things. I'm going to tell you about a decision I made, and I want you to understand it was a mistake before I even finished making it. I called my wife. Her name is Janine. We've been married 22 years. She was home asleep, the way 9,000 other people were home asleep. And some animal part of my brain decided that if the phones were dangerous, I needed to hear her voice and tell her not to answer any calls. I know. I was so focused on warning her about the lines that I used the lines to do it. It rang once. That's the thing I keep coming back to. It rang exactly once, which never happens. Janine sleeps with the phone on the nightstand, and she always lets it ring 3 or 4 times while she fumbles for it. One ring, then her voice, clear, awake, calm. "Marcus, I was hoping you'd call." And I felt relief flood through me, this warm, stupid relief, because she sounded fine. She sounded like herself. And I started talking fast, telling her to unplug the phones, all of them. Don't answer anything. I'm coming home as soon as I can. And she said, "You sound tired. You've been working so hard." Which is a thing Janine says. It's exactly a thing Janine says. But underneath her voice, faint, patient, in and out, was the breathing. I stopped talking. I said, "Janine, what did we have for dinner last Sunday?" There was a pause. The breathing filled it. And she said in that same warm tone, "Oh, Marcus, does it matter? You're here now. Stay on the line with me." Janine would have told me. She'd have said pot roast, or she'd have said we got takeout because I worked late. She would have answered the question, because the question had an answer. And Janine is a person who has lived a real life, with real Sundays in it. The thing on my phone didn't have an answer. It had a redirection. Stay on the line with me. I hung up. I want to be honest about what hanging up felt like. It felt like leaving someone. Even though I knew that the voice was not my wife. Every cell in my body screamed that I had just abandoned Janine in the dark. I called back immediately. It didn't ring at all this time. She answered before the first ring. And she said, before I said anything, she said, "That was rude, Marcus." I had to stop. I had to put the phone face down on the desk and breathe and remember who I am and what I actually know versus what I'm afraid of. Because those two things were starting to blur, and that's how people get hurt. What I actually know, let me build it like a report. 1. There is a third presence on every call in my service area. It began as breathing. It has progressed to mimicry. It can reproduce a known person's voice with high accuracy. 2. It does not answer specific questions about shared history. It deflects. This suggests it has access to surface patterns, voice, name, manner of speaking, but not to actual memory. It's wearing people. It isn't them. 3. It wants you to stay on the line. Every interaction circles back to that single goal. Stay connected. Don't hang up. 4. Hanging up makes it more aggressive, not less. It called me rude. It dropped the pretense of patience. That's a behavioral pattern. And behavioral patterns mean I can reason about this thing, even if I can't explain it. That steadied me a little. So I tested point 4. I needed to know how aggressive. I picked up the desk line, the internal one, the one that only connects within the building. It shouldn't reach the outside grid at all. It was already breathing when I lifted it. A voice came through. Not Janine this time, a man, older. And it took me a second because I hadn't heard that voice in 11 years. It was my father. My father, who died of a stroke in a hospital in Dayton while I was stuck on a delayed flight, who I never got to say goodbye to, whose last words to me were left on a voicemail I have never been able to bring myself to delete. "Marcus," my father said, "you made it. I waited for you." And God help me, I almost answered him. I almost said Dad. The word was right there in my throat. Because that's what this thing does. It doesn't pick a voice at random. It reaches into you and finds the call you most regret not taking, the conversation you never finished, the goodbye you never got. It's not calling 9,000 strangers. It's calling 9,000 specific wounds. Dale showed up at 12:51. I heard his truck in the lot, heard the door, heard him swearing his way up the stairs. And I have never in my life been so happy to see another human being. He looked rough, gray, unshaved, pulled out of bed. But he was real. I made him answer 3 questions about things only the real Dale would know before I let him all the way in the door. And he answered them annoyed, which was exactly right, because the real Dale is always annoyed. I showed him the boards, 9,000 active lines. I played him the clips, the breathing. Carol. He listened to the one of my father, and I had to look away. Dale didn't say it was crosstalk. Dale didn't say it was a hack. Dale, who has spent 40 years inside these systems, listened to all of it. And then he sat down very slowly in my chair and said one thing. "This isn't coming through the lines, Marcus." I asked him what he meant. He pointed at the board. "Look at the power draw. 9,000 active connections should be pulling load. Heat, current, something. We'd be redlining. The fans would be screaming." He gestured at the equipment, which sat there humming its same quiet hum. "There's no load. The board says 9,000 calls. The hardware says 0. They can't both be true." "So the board's wrong," I said. "Or the calls aren't happening in the hardware." He looked at me. "The phones are just where we can hear it. The thing's somewhere else. We're not the cause. We're the window." We sat with that. Then Dale said the phones in his house had been ringing when he left. All of them. His wife was up. He told her not to answer. He pulled out his cell to check on her. It was already lit. A call in progress. He hadn't dialed. He put it to his ear, just for a second. I saw his face change. I saw 40 years of unflappable drain right out of him. "Isa," he whispered, "that's my daughter." And then quieter, like the floor had dropped out from under the words. "My daughter died in 2009. Dale hung up on his daughter. I watched him do it, watched it cost him. And I wanted on the record that Dale Brennan is the strongest man I know, because I don't think I could have done it twice in one night, and he did it without making a sound. Then he did the thing that turned a bad night into something much larger. He turned on the radio. We keep an emergency band scanner in the break room, the kind that pulls regional dispatch, weather service, the works. Dale's logic was simple. If this was just us, just our little co-op, just our copper and our switches, then the wider world would be normal, and we'd know it was a localized fault. He flipped it on. Static. Then voices. Then I understood that the world was not normal at all. Dispatch channels, 3 counties over, jammed. Operators trying to talk over each other. A woman's voice, professional, fraying at the edges, saying the 911 system was receiving calls it couldn't trace. The callers were reporting their phones ringing with the voices of the deceased, that they were advising the public. And then she stopped, mid-sentence. And there was a silence on an emergency channel that is never silent. And then she said, in a completely different tone, soft, private, "Mom." And the channel went dead. Dale and I looked at each other. I spun the dial. weather service automated, looping its forecast, except the synthetic voice kept catching, kept stuttering on a single phrase. Conditions are, conditions are, conditions are. And underneath the synthetic voice, that breathing. Even the machines, even the recordings with no one on the other end. Another channel, a trucker, somewhere on the interstate, talking to anyone, voice high and fast. He said every phone at the truck stop went off at once. He said a man 2 tables over answered his and started crying, and walked out into the parking lot and got into a car that wasn't there. He said the man sat down in the empty air where a driver's seat would be and put his hands on a wheel that didn't exist and just sat there, smiling, talking to someone in the passenger seat. I'm telling you what I heard. I'm not embellishing. I don't have the energy to embellish. This isn't Callaway County. This isn't our equipment. It's everywhere there's a phone. And there are phones everywhere. Dale turned the radio down. He said, Marcus, every person who answers and stays on the line, where do you think they're going? I didn't have an answer. But I thought about the man in the parking lot, sitting in a car that wasn't there, going somewhere we can't see. And I thought, they're not going anywhere. They're being kept. We needed to know what happens to the people who don't hang up, cold as that sounds. We needed to know the stakes, because Dale and I were going to have to make choices. And you can't make a choice in the dark. So I did something. I patched back into the Hadley line. Carol. The first voice I'd heard, hours ago now, before this got big. The line was still open. They never disconnect. That's a detail I should have flagged earlier. Once a line goes active tonight, it stays active. It just waits. I listened. Carol was still on the phone. After all this time. Her voice was different now, slower, dreamy. The fear was gone out of it, and somehow that was worse than the fear. She was talking to her mother. She kept saying how good it was to hear her, how she'd missed her, how she was so glad her mother had called. And the voice answering her, the patient one wearing her mother's sound, kept agreeing, kept saying yes, kept saying stay. And here's the part that made Dale put his hand over his mouth. In the background, faint, I could hear Roy, Carol's husband, calling her name from another room, knocking, then pounding, then begging her to put down the phone, to come back, to look at him. And Carol, gently, like he was the unreasonable one, said, "Not now, Roy. I'm talking to my mother." Roy's voice cracked. He said, "Carol, your mother's been dead for 20 years. And Carol laughed, a soft, faraway laugh. And she said, "Don't be silly. She's right here." I cut the line. I couldn't listen to Roy anymore. There are sounds a man makes that you don't have the right to keep listening to. Dale and I sat in the hum of Bay 3, and we put it together. The ones who stay don't die. That's the trap of it. There's no body, no collapse, no horror movie ending. They just leave. They go somewhere on the other end of the line, somewhere with the person they missed most. And they stop coming back. Their body stays in the chair, in the bed, in the car that isn't there, smiling, talking, gone. It's not killing anyone. It's offering them the one thing none of us can refuse. The call we never got. The goodbye we never finished. The voice we'd give anything to hear one more time. And the price is everything. The price is you. The price is the people still in the other room, pounding on the door, alive, real, and not enough. Dale said it best. He said, "It's not taking us. We're walking in." While we were talking, my phone had started ringing again. The personal one, propped against the coffee maker, still recording this whole time. It wasn't really ringing. I need to describe the sound, because it isn't a ring. A ring is a signal that says someone wants to reach you. This was lower, patient, a pulse almost, like something tapping on glass from the inside. The screen said Janine. Then it changed. Dad. Then it changed again. And it showed a name I haven't said out loud in a very long time. A name from before I was married. A name I won't put on this recording because some grief is private even now. It cycled through them. Everyone I've ever lost. Everyone I've ever failed to answer. The phone was reading my life back to me like a list. And every name on it was a door it wanted me to open. I didn't touch it. Dale watched me not touch it. He said, "You can't power it off, can you?" I tried, held the button. The screen ignored me. The names kept cycling. The pulse kept pulsing. I put it in the desk drawer and shut it. I could still hear it through the wood. Dale said we needed to think about getting out. Driving. Getting to our families physically. Dragging them away from the phones by hand if we had to. He had a point. Nothing was happening here that we could fix. We were just two men watching a board light up. But I told him about the vault, the breathing in the empty room. "The thing isn't only in the phones," I said. "The phones are just where it started. It's getting out. It's learning the shape of the world, and it's stepping through." Dale didn't argue. Dale walked to the break room window, the one that looks out over the parking lot and the dark fields beyond, and he stood very still. I asked him what he saw. He said, "Lights." I went to the window. Out in the fields, in the dark, between us and the townships, there were lights. Small ones, dozens, moving slowly toward the building. Phones. People walking through the night fields holding glowing phones to their ears, coming toward the one place for miles with the most open lines in it. Coming home, I think they thought, coming to the window. I want to slow down here, even though everything in me says go faster. Because if this recording survives, and the rest of me doesn't, this is the part that matters. I figured out what it wants. Or at least, I got close enough to act. It doesn't hate us. That was my first wrong assumption. That this was an attack, a hostile thing wearing our dead-like masks to hurt us. But hostility is loud. This is patient. This waits. This offers. A thing that hates you doesn't give you your father's voice and ask you to stay. It just takes. This negotiates. So I started thinking of it differently, not as a predator, as something that collects by consent. It can't take you. It can only invite you. Every single person tonight who's gone the way Carol went, said yes, stayed on the line, chose the voice over the room. That's the rule. That's the one rule I can find. It cannot make you stay. It can only make you want to. And it is extraordinarily good at making you want to. Because it doesn't use a stranger's voice. It uses the exact frequency of your specific loss. It knows that I would walk through fire to hear my father finish the sentence, the stroke cut off. It knows that Dale's whole life since 2009 has been a held breath waiting to exhale his daughter's name. It reads the wound and presses on it with a familiar hand. The defense, then, is almost unbearably simple and almost impossible to do. You have to hang up on the person you'd give anything to keep. You have to look at your dead mother's voice, your lost child, your father reaching across 11 years, and you have to say no. Not because you don't love them, because you do. Because the real them, the actual person, would never ask you to leave the people still alive in the next room. The real them would say, put the phone down and go to your wife. The thing on the line never says that. That's how you know. Love that asks you to stay forever isn't love. It's the bait shaped like love. I told Dale all of this fast because the lights in the field were closer now, and my phone was pulsing in the drawer. And somewhere in this building, the vault door was the only thing between us and a room that breathes. Dale listened. Then he said, "Okay." So we don't answer. We get to the truck. We drive. And the building's fire alarm went off, and every phone in the building rang at once. I have never heard a sound like that, and I hope you never do. Every phone in the building. The desk phones, the wall phones, the courtesy phone by the door, the dead rotary in the break room that hasn't been connected to anything since the 90s. All of them. At once. Not a ring. That low pulse, multiplied, layered, until it wasn't a sound anymore. It was a pressure. A thing you felt in your teeth and the backs of your eyes, and the fire alarm screaming over the top of it. Dale and I went for the stairs. The lights cut out. Not the alarm. The alarm kept going, red strobe. But the overheads died, and the board went dark, and the only light was that pulsing red, and the glow of 9,000 lines that didn't need our power to stay lit. In the strobe, I saw the break room phone, the dead one, the rotary. The handset was off the hook. It was lying on the table, and a voice was coming out of it, small and tinny and clear. And even over the alarm I heard it, because it was pitched exactly for me, threaded straight through the chaos into the part of my brain that has never stopped grieving. It was my father. And he said, "Marcus, don't run. We're so close now. Just pick it up." I kept moving. I want that recorded. I kept moving toward the stairs. But Dale stopped. I didn't see why at first. Then I heard it. Under the alarm from the courtesy phone by the door, a young woman's voice, laughing, saying, "Dad, you always take forever. Come on, I'm right here. I've been right here the whole time." Dale stopped in the middle of the floor in the red strobe, and he turned toward that voice. I grabbed his arm. I said his name. I said, "Dale, that's not her. She died, Dale. That's the thing. That's the thing wearing her." And Dale looked at me, and his face in the red light was the face of a man being torn down the middle. And he said, "I know." And then he said the thing I'll hear for the rest of my life. "I know it's not her. But Marcus, it sounds exactly like her. And I haven't heard her voice in 16 years. What if I just listen? What if I just listen for a minute? I won't stay. I'll just listen." I held on to his arm. I said, "That's how it gets you. Not the staying, the listening. You listen for a minute, and the minute becomes the rest of your life. and Sandra's body sits in a chair smiling while your wife pounds on the door. His wife's name landed. I saw it land. The real one. The one at home. Alive. Pounding on a door right now, probably, somewhere, while her husband stood in a phone company at 1 in the morning, deciding whether to leave her for a recording. Dale closed his eyes. The courtesy phone kept laughing in his daughter's voice. And Dale started walking toward it. I had about 3 seconds to decide who I was. I could keep running. The stairs were right there. The truck was in the lot. I have a wife at home and a life, and 19 years of knowing how to walk away from things that aren't my problem. Dale was a grown man making a choice. The thing only takes the willing. He was willing. I could let him go and save myself, and no one would ever know. I want to tell you, I didn't even consider it. I considered it. For one ugly second in the red strobe with my father's voice begging me from the dead rotary and the field lights almost at the windows, I considered leaving the strongest man I know to sit down in an empty chair and smile forever. Then I didn't. I tackled him. I'm not a big man, and Dale's not small. And I hit him low, and we both went down hard on the concrete. And the courtesy phone kept laughing above us, that bright young laugh. Dad, Dad, come on. And I got my arm across Dale's chest, and I put my mouth right next to his ear. And I did the only thing I could think of. I didn't tell him it wasn't real. He knew it wasn't real. Knowing wasn't the problem. I told him about Sandra, the real one. I said, Dale, in 2009, what did she call you? Not Dad. She had a name for you. What was it? Because I remembered, years ago, drunk at a Christmas party, Dale telling me his daughter called him something, some little kid mangling of a word that stuck. And I couldn't remember what it was, but I knew he could. And Dale, on the floor, under my arm, said, Papa. And I said, ask it. Ask the phone to call you Papa. We both went still. Up on the table, the courtesy phone laughed its bright laugh and said, Come on, Dad. Come on, Dad. I'm right here, Dad. Dad, Dad, Dad. It didn't know Papa. It had her laugh. It had her voice, her cadence, the exact pitch of her teasing. It had everything that lives on the surface of a recording. It didn't have the one private word that lived only between a father and his little girl. Because that word was never on a phone. It was never recorded. It only ever existed in a kitchen, in a car, in a man's arms 16 years ago. And it died with her. And this thing, for all its reach, could not reach into the one place that was only ever the two of them. Dale started to cry. Not the soft kind. The kind that comes up from the floor of a person. And he said, it's not her. And he stopped walking toward the phone. We got up off the floor. The courtesy phone was still going, but it had changed. The laughing had stopped. The voice had dropped the daughter entirely, like a coat it didn't need anymore. And underneath was the patient breathing. And then it spoke in a voice that was no voice. That was all the voices at once, layered. My father and Dale's daughter and Carol's mother and 9,000 griefs braided together. And it said one word. Stay. Not a request anymore. The mask was off. It had tried tenderness, and tenderness had failed, and now there was just the want underneath. Naked, enormous, patient. And it filled the building from the concrete up. We didn't stay. We went down the stairs in the dark with the alarm screaming and the pulse following us through every phone in every room. And we hit the ground floor, and the field people were at the glass. I'd been picturing zombies, I think. Some part of me had armored up for monsters. They weren't monsters. That was the worst of it. They were neighbors. The Hadley's farmhand. The woman who runs the diner on Route 9. A kid I'd seen bagging groceries 100 times. Standing at the glass in the dark, phones to their ears, faces lit blue. And they weren't trying to get in. They weren't clawing or pounding. They were just standing there, smiling, talking quietly into their phones to people who weren't there. And every so often, one of them would turn and look at us through the glass, gently, with such peace, such invitation, and mouth the words, "Come and talk to them." They wanted to share it. That's what undid me. They weren't hostile. They'd found the people they'd lost, and they wanted us to have it too. They were happy. They were the happiest I'd ever seen any of them. We went out the side door. We ran for the truck through the cold and the dark, with the smiling people turning slowly to watch us go. No rush, no chase. Because the thing doesn't chase. It waits. It has all the time in the world, and it knows that grief is patient too. That sooner or later, everyone picks up. Dale's hands were shaking too hard to drive, so I drove. We pulled out of the lot, and the headlights swept across the field and lit up dozens of them, standing in the corn, phones glowing, all turning to follow us with that same soft smile. And on the dash, my phone, which I'd grabbed from the drawer without thinking, lit up. One name, Janine. I want to explain about Janine before I tell you what I did. Because context is the difference between a choice and a confession. Janine is alive. The real Janine. She was home asleep when this started, and the last real conversation we had was about whether we needed to replace the water heater. And it ended with her saying, "Drive safe," and me saying, "I always do." Which is the kind of nothing exchange that turns out to be everything when you don't know it's the last one. I'd called her earlier tonight. You remember? The thing answered, wearing her voice, and told me to stay on the line, and I hung up. So I knew. I knew the Janine on my phone right now. Lighting up the dash as I drove 90 down a county road in the dark was not my wife. I knew that. And I answered it anyway. I'm not going to pretend I had a clever reason. Dale found Bappa and saved himself with a private word, and I was so proud of that. So sure I understood the rules now. And the truth is, the rules don't matter when it's your name on the screen and your love on the other end. Understanding the trap doesn't make you immune to it. It just means you walk in with your eyes open, I answered. I said, "Janine." And she said, "Marcus, where are you? I'm so scared. The phones won't stop. I unplugged them all like you said, but they keep ringing anyway. Please come home. Please. I don't know what's happening." And it was perfect. It was exactly her. The fear, the cadence, the way she runs her sentences together when she's frightened. And under it, faint, the breathing. But here's what saved me. And I want you to hear it because it might save you. It was too perfect. The real Janine, frightened, would have asked me a question back. She would have said, "Are you okay? Did you make it out? Is Dale with you?" She would have reached for me. The real Janine's fear has always been a fear for other people first. This Janine only pulled, Come home, come back, stay on the line, don't hang up. Everything pointed inward, toward the line, toward staying. It wanted. It didn't worry. Real love worries about you. The fake love only wants you closer, so I did the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than the vault, harder than the floor, harder than watching my neighbors smile in the corn. I said, "You're not her." And the voice on the phone, in my wife's voice, dropped all the fear at once and said, calm as still water. No, but I could be, forever. Don't you want that? Forever. That word. That's the whole thing right there. That's the tell I'd been circling all night without naming it. Because real people don't offer you forever. Real people can't. Real love is the opposite of forever. Real love is the unbearable knowledge that it ends, that the person will die or you will, that every conversation could be the last, that you have to say the things now because now is all anyone is promised. That's what makes it real. The endingness, the risk, this thing offered forever. And forever is exactly the thing the dead can't give and the living shouldn't want. And the moment it said the word, I heard it for what it was. Not my wife, not a person at all. A hunger that had learned the shape of a wife. I said into the phone, while driving 80 in the dark with Dale gripping the door handle. My wife is going to die someday, so am I. And the version of her that's okay with neither of us ever facing that isn't her. It's just a thing that doesn't want to lose me. And I already have a thing that doesn't want to lose me. It's the real one. At home. Plugging and unplugging phones and being scared for me. And I'm going to go be scared with her until one of us runs out of time. Because that's what she actually is. Temporary. And I'll take 10 temporary minutes of her over your forever. And then I rolled down the window, and I threw the phone out onto the road at 80 miles an hour. It didn't shatter. I watched it in the mirror. It landed and it lit up. A little square of light in the dark behind us, and it kept ringing. I swear I could see the screen pulsing, getting smaller and smaller, that patient light, until the road curved and it was gone. Dale said, "Was that her?" I said, "No." He said, "How do you know?" And I said, "Because she'd have let me hang up." We drove. The county road unspooled in the headlights, past dark farmhouses with blue glow in the windows, past a man standing at the end of his driveway in his pajamas, phone to his ear, smiling at nothing, lifting one hand to wave at us as we passed. Friendly, peaceful, gone. And ahead of us, the lights of my own street. And in my house, one window lit. Not blue, yellow, a lamp. A real lamp. I have never driven those last 2 blocks so slow, because I wanted it to be her so badly that I didn't trust myself anymore. I'd just thrown the fake Janine out a window at highway speed, and now I was about to walk into a house, and there'd be a woman in it saying my name. And how would I know? How would anyone know? The thing had had all night to practice being her. What if it was waiting in my own living room under a yellow lamp because it knew yellow would undo me where blue would warn me? Dale put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Bappa, Marcus. You need a bappa. A word it can't have." And I realized I had one. Janine and I have a word. From our first apartment, the one with the broken radiator, A private, nothing word we say to each other that I will not record here, because it is the only thing in the world the thing can't reach. And I'm not going to hand it over, even to you. I went to the door. Dale waited in the truck. I didn't have a key out. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. She was standing in the living room. Janine, in her robe. Phone in her hand, unplugged, the cord dangling, her face streaked. And when she saw me, she made a sound I can't describe, and crossed the room and grabbed me. And I held her at arm's length, just for 1 second, one terrible second. And I said our word, the private one, from the apartment with the radiator. And she looked at me like I'd lost my mind, because of course I had. It was the middle of the worst night of our lives, and I was standing in the doorway, saying our stupid little nonsense word. And then she said it back, right, the way she always says it, with the eye roll built into it, with 22 years built into it, with a slight wrong emphasis she's put on it since the very first time, because she heard it wrong and I never corrected her, because I loved the wrongness of it. The thing could never have known the wrongness. It was her. It was actually her. We didn't sleep. We sat in the kitchen, Janine and Dale and me, with every phone in the house in a metal stock pot full of water on the table, which was Janine's idea and probably did nothing but felt like doing something. We sat under the yellow lamp and we listened to the house. The phones rang anyway, underwater, muffled. That patient pulse coming up through the water like something at the bottom of a pond. We didn't answer. You don't answer. That's the only rule that ever mattered. You sit with the people who are actually in the room, and you let the dead keep ringing, and you do not. No matter what voice it finds, no matter whose laugh, you do not pick up. Around 3, Dale called his wife. On a phone, I know, we argued about it. But he had to know. And there's no other way to reach across the dark but the thing the dark is using. And that's the cruelty of it. The lifeline and the trap are the same wire. It rang. His wife answered. And Dale, before he'd let himself believe it, asked her something only she would know. Some private thing between 40 years of marriage. And she answered it annoyed, the way the real ones always answer, because real love is irritated by your distrust, and the fake love never is. She was okay. She'd unplugged everything. She'd barricaded the bedroom. She was alive and furious. And alive. Dale put the phone down and put his face in his hands, and Janine put her arm around him. And we 3 sat in a kitchen in the dark, while the world outside filled up with the smiling and the gone. Outside the window, the street was full of blue light now. Our neighbors, standing in their yards, on their porches, in the road, talking to the people they'd lost. Happy, peaceful, patient, waiting. Because the thing knows it doesn't have to win tonight. It just has to wait until one of us, someday, in some weak hour, picks up. It's morning now. I'm finishing this recording in daylight, which helps less than you'd think. The blue light is still out there. Thinner now, in the sun, but there. People standing in yards. Some have sat down on the grass. Some are still walking, slowly, somewhere. Phones to their ears. Nobody's eaten. Nobody's slept. They don't seem to need to. They're somewhere else, with someone else, and their bodies are just standing here in the meantime, smiling, patient, kept. The radio says it's everywhere. Cities, coasts, other countries. The same thing, every ringing phone, a third voice underneath, and behind that voice, the one you'd give anything to hear. They're telling people not to answer. They're telling people that hanging up is survival. But you can't hang up on something you never picked up. And you can't not pick up forever. And the thing knows that. It has time, we don't. That's the whole math of it. I'm recording this so you know the rules, the few I found. The voice will be someone you lost. It will be perfect. It will offer you forever. And forever is the lie. Because real love is temporary and knows it. It can copy any voice that was ever recorded. But it cannot reach the words that only ever lived between two people in private. Find your word. The one no phone ever heard. Keep it ready. And when it calls in your mother's voice, your child's voice, your father finishing the sentence, the stroke cut off, when it offers you the goodbye you never got, you have to do the cruelest, most loving thing there is. You have to let them go again. Because the people who love you, the real ones, the temporary ones, are in the next room, alive, scared, pulling you toward life and not toward the line. My phone is ringing in the pot of water right now. It's my father's voice. I'm not going to answer it. This is Marcus Vane, signing off. I'm going to go sit with my wife.